Marylouise Uhlig was the 8th president of FEW. She is an SES employee with the Environmental Protection Agency and has also worked for the Defense Mapping Agency, the Department of the Navy, and the Department of Labor. Marylouise served as national president from 1980 to 1982.
This was a period of time when we saw, when I took over, and then as I finished my 2 years of FEW presidency, that was during two very different administrations under the leadership of two very different presidents. You heard about the fun president and the fun 4 years. That was not how you'd characterize my 2 years or the person who followed me. Before I go into that, I just want to mention very briefly that I too, like a lot of my sister presidents, and I do regard this as a unique sorority. I mean, you know, you always hear about the Miss Americas and their past, you know, Miss Americas, and they have their own neat little sorority, and it's a very small group. Well, you're looking at, I think we've got a lot more substance and style going for us. This is our sorority. It's a very, very unique sorority, and we're going to welcome Jean to this sorority as the past president sorority of FEW. And like a lot of them, I too am a lifetime member of FEW. I started way back when we met in the old cafeteria at the Treasury Department. And the reason I joined, I was always active in college in terms of civil rights issues for all people, not just women, all people. And so I had that activity level, and I was an organizer and running clubs and things just much like Allie was talking about. But when I came to Washington, it was a couple who got me involved with FEW, and it was Fred and Barbara McGarry. And Fred was in personnel, and I want to give him some credit. He's deceased now, but it was really that couple who took me to my first meeting, who really exposed me to FEW, said this is where the action is. And I want to point out that FEW all along the way, as some of the previous presidents have mentioned in their presentations, have been lucky that we have had the support of some very outstanding men all along, from the very beginning in Allie's days. My involvement with Fred, one of my chairs when I was national president was a man. I think that's very important, that we cannot assume that all men are against us, nor can we assume that all women are for us. I think we all know that, but sometimes it pays to state the obvious. And then I ventured across the river after learning all about FEW from the experts when we were starting to form chapters, and then the NOVA chapter is the chapter, the Northern Virginia chapter that I regard as my home chapter. And I worked my way up through chapter organizations and was the DC Metropolitan Region Coordinator, and then various roles, National Bylaws Chair, Membership Chair, and eventually National President. And the reason why I say that is just like on your real job, and the FEW organization, I really regard that as, that's just my unpaid job. It's as real as the real job. Has always been, has been just as demanding, but I'm just not paid for that. But you get rewards in other ways other than financial ways. But I want to point out to you that you can get to the top of organizations, whether it's FEW or your real job, in all sorts of ways. You can do it by working your way up through the various levels or hitting every single grade level, and sometimes you can do it by coming in at other levels. And so there's all sorts of ways to arrive at the same position. Back to the 2 years and the interesting period of history that I found myself as president. One of the early historians of women's contributions said, and I quote, "For patriotism and courage do not exist only behind a bayonet. One can be heroic in any way that conquers circumstance." And end of quote. The 2 years that I was president, I saw those virtues in all levels of FEW and in all the federal agencies that I visited. This was when not only were women under attack, but public employees as a whole were under attack. If you can remember, this was the time of wide scare tactics concerning public employees, a lot of talk about rifts, and in fact rifts did occur, cutbacks about benefits, putting everybody under universal Social Security. It was a very trying time. And I think that, again, the career employees, FEW in particular, conquered those circumstances during those 2 years. As an organization, we can point, and I'm going to try and highlight some of those things in those 2 very rough years, of accomplishments in terms of what we did in terms of women's growth, in terms of